3 days into retirement, I was sitting where they told me to sit. Not in the way. Quiet. Useful by being invisible. I had learned that part quickly. Elaine came in fast, already irritated, already decided. The rag hit my chest before the words did. Damp, heavy, it slid down my sweater and landed in my lap. "From now on, cooking and laundry are your job," she said, standing over me like this had been overdue. "You're home all day. Stop freeloading." The room went tight. My hands stayed where they were. I could hear my own breathing and nothing else. Daniel didn't look at the rag. He didn't look at my face either. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, voice flat, with something sharper underneath. "Mom, you can't expect to live here for nothing." A pause, a small shrug. "You're only useful for that now." Something shifted then. Not in them. In me. I thought of the years I woke up early so they wouldn't feel poor. The nights I stayed up late so they wouldn't feel alone. The checks I signed without asking how they would be paid back. The space I shrank myself into so they could grow. Elaine waited. Daniel watched. I picked the rag up from my lap and folded it once. Then again. Neat. Careful. I placed it on the side table between us. Of course. Elaine blinked. She had expected resistance, anger, tears, something loud enough to justify what she had already decided about me. Daniel's mouth tightened. His weight shifted off the wall just slightly, like he was recalculating. Elaine recovered first. Good. Then we're clear. She grabbed her keys. Dinner needs to be earlier. And don't forget the bathroom. I like it clean. Daniel followed her to the door. Halfway there, he turned back. And don't make this a thing. The door closed. Their footsteps faded. The house held its breath. I stayed where I was for a moment longer, hands folded, spine straight, face calm. The word still hung in the air between us, doing exactly what it needed to do. Of course. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Shadow Channel team based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family emotions and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. I worked my whole life in rooms where nobody remembered my name. Front desks, back offices, windowless corners where things had to be right. But the person who made them right didn't matter. I learned early that reliability was invisible. I became very good at it. When their father left the house, went quiet in a way that scared the children. I filled the silence with routine. Lunches packed, permission slips signed, late shifts taken without complaint. At night, Elaine would sit at the kitchen table pretending to do homework, while Daniel slept on the couch, his head heavy on my thigh. I never moved him. I learned how to stay still. Years later, when Elaine cried at my kitchen counter about her mortgage, I didn't ask for details. I signed papers instead. Sold my condo. Just until things stabilize, she said, voice tight with relief. You can stay with us for a bit. Temporary sounded kind. Temporary sounded safe. At first it was. I cooked because I always had. I folded laundry because it was easier than stepping over it. When Elaine thanked me, it felt like a bonus. When she stopped, I told myself she was tired. When Daniel began leaving his mug in the sink, I rinsed it without comment. "Mom, you don't have to do that," he'd mutter, already walking away. I did it anyway. The shift was quiet. I became the one who noticed things. Empty fridge, overdue bill, sticky floor. The one who fixed them without being asked. The guest chair disappeared. My things moved into a single drawer. The spare room became storage. Nobody announced the change. They didn't have to. When I mentioned retirement at dinner, Daniel nodded without looking up. Elaine smiled too fast. "So you'll be around more," she said. "That helps." Helps was not the same as wanted. By the time my last paycheck cleared, the house had already decided what I would be next. Not a woman who had earned rest, just someone home during the day, available, useful, replaceable. The door shut behind them with the soft confidence of people who believed the matter was settled. Keys, footsteps, the familiar rhythm of leaving without looking back. I stayed where I was. The word lingered longer than they did. Of course. Elaine had nodded like she'd won something. Daniel's mouth had tightened the way it always did when things went easier than expected. They left satisfied, convinced they had corrected a problem. I heard my mother's voice, then clear and unwelcome. Never give everything away. She used to say it while counting change at the kitchen table, her fingers stained with ink from a job that never loved her back. I used to laugh it off. I told her love didn't work that way. I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain had already done its work. Crying belonged to an earlier version of me, the one who still hoped explanation could fix contempt. Their words replayed without effort. Only useful. Live here for nothing. They didn't sound angry anymore. They sounded practical. Like instructions, like policy. I stood and walked down the hall. The closet door resisted for a moment before opening as if it remembered being ignored. Coats crowded the rod. Shoes I hadn't worn in years sat neatly below, pushed back to make room for everyone else's. The suitcase waited where it always had. Brown, scratched, small. I hadn't opened it since the year Daniel left for college. I pulled it out and set it upright. The handle was colder than I expected. From the kitchen came the faint echo of Elaine's last instruction. Earlier dinner, clean bathroom, don't make this a thing. I ran my hand along the zipper and stopped. There was no rush, no anger to fuel the moment, just clarity. They had decided who I was without asking. I was finally free to decide what to do with that answer. I waited until the house forgot I was there. Elaine's shoes were by the door. Daniel's jacket hung where I'd straightened it earlier. I moved past both without touching them. The suitcase opened on the bed with a soft sigh, as if it recognized me. Clothes first. The ones that were mine before I became useful. Documents next. Birth certificate, insurance cards, a folder I'd kept current, even when no one asked why. Photographs, last thin stacks that fit into an envelope. I left behind everything that could be replaced. I kept what could not. I folded carefully. Not out of habit, out of respect for myself. In the kitchen, I wrote a note on the back of an old receipt. The pen felt heavy, so I kept it short. I'm going to take care of myself. Don't worry. No explanations. No apologies. No promises. The clock on the microwave clicked past midnight. I dialed for a taxi and spoke quietly, the way you do when you don't want the walls to listen. The driver's voice came through calm and practiced. Address, I gave it. My own name sounded unfamiliar when I said it out loud. He arrived quickly. A man in his 40s with tired eyes and a polite distance. He took the suitcase without comment. Long night, he said, not looking at me. Longer if I stay, I answered, and surprised myself with how steady it sounded. He nodded. No follow-up. That was kindness. As the car pulled away, the house stayed dark. No lights flicked on. No doors opened. My phone didn't buzz. The silence felt earned. My hands trembled once, then stilled. Fear passed through me like a cold draft and moved on. What followed settled deeper, a loosening. Space. I watched the street recede and felt something unfamiliar stretch inside my chest. Not hope, not anger. Relief. The kind that comes when a door closes behind you and doesn't ask you to come back. The first call came just after 6. My phone buzzed once on the table and went still. A minute later again. Then a third time, closer together now, like impatience finding its rhythm. I let it ring. When the messages started, they came clipped and efficient. Did you cook anything? The washer's full. Did you start it? Where are you? No greeting. No pause, no room for concern. An hour passed before the tone changed. Mom, this isn't funny. We had a long day. The house is a mess. I pictured Elaine standing in the kitchen, opening cabinets too hard. Daniel checking the fridge, then checking again as if something might appear if he stared long enough. The phone buzzed again. Why didn't you at least leave dinner? Elaine's uniform is still dirty. You knew we'd be home late. I listened to the vibration fade and imagined the silence that followed on their end. The kind that grows loud when no one steps in to fix it. Another call. This time, Daniel's voice came through the speaker before I could stop it sharp with irritation. Mom, pick up. This has gone far enough. I set the phone face down. A few minutes later, Elaine's voice filled the room tight and fast. If you're trying to prove a point, congratulations. The place is chaos. Chaos. Because plates stayed where they were left, because floors stayed dirty, because no one smoothed the edges for them. The messages stacked higher. Are you coming back tonight? At least tell us where you are. This is irresponsible. Still nothing about whether I was all right. Nothing about the night. Nothing about the woman who had been there that morning. Only the work. Only the absence of it. When the phone finally went quiet, I didn't feel victorious. I felt seen for the first time not as a person, but as a missing function. And that was enough to know I had done the right thing. By morning, the messages had changed shape. Daniel's voice came first, slower now, measured in a way that pretended concern. Mom, you scared us. You can't just disappear like that. A pause, carefully placed. You know you've been forgetting things lately. I listened without interrupting. He had always been good at softening a blade before using it. Another message followed, this time written instead of spoken. You seemed upset yesterday. Maybe you weren't thinking clearly. The words sat there polite and poisonous. Elaine didn't bother with that tone. Her message arrived sharp and fast. If you don't answer, we're going to call someone. This isn't normal. A minute later, another. We just want to make sure you're safe. Safe. Not respected. Not missed. Daniel tried again, impatience bleeding through the careful phrasing. Elaine's worried you might hurt yourself or get lost. He cleared his throat. If we have to involve authorities, that's on you. I imagined them standing together now, rehearsing this version, the one where I was fragile, the one where my refusal became a symptom. My phone buzzed again. Elaine louder this time. You're being dramatic. You always do this when you don't get your way. A breath, then the threat slid in. We can call for a wellness check. I set the phone down and watched it vibrate against the table. Each buzz was a demand dressed as concern. They had moved past anger, past guilt. This was control reaching for a uniform and a clipboard to do what words no longer could. I picked the phone up once more, not to answer, but to choose. The screen went dark. The room settled into a deeper quiet, one that didn't ask anything of me. I sat with it steady, knowing exactly where I was and why I was there. Whatever they decided to do next, it would happen without my permission. And that was the point. The clerk slid the key across the counter without asking anything personal. I gave my name signed once, and that was it. No raised eyebrows. No explanations required. I appreciated the economy of it. Upstairs, I set the suitcase on the bed and opened the folder I had kept separate for years. It was thick, orderly, familiar in my hands. Deeds, statements, copies of documents I updated quietly the way some people keep emergency candles. Not because they expect a blackout, because they understand how fast light can go. The property sat beyond the historic district, small and plain, inherited and paid for. I had never mentioned it. Not when Elaine struggled. Not when Daniel hinted that things were tight. I told myself I was shielding them from worry, from temptation, from the belief that I could always fix what they broke. I flipped through bank records next. Modest savings. A retirement income that covered more than the basics. Insurance current. Beneficiaries named. A will signed and dated. Nothing dramatic. Nothing secret. Just prepared. My phone stayed off. I sat at the desk and heard my mother again, not as a warning this time, but as recognition. She had known the difference between generosity and erasure. I had taken longer to learn it. A knock sounded. Housekeeping. I opened the door enough to shake my head. No, thank you. The woman smiled and moved on. I returned to the folder and closed it with care. For years, I had mistaken restraint for weakness, silence for surrender. I thought love meant leaving nothing for myself. I placed the folder back into the suitcase and zipped it closed. The sound was clean and final. They had believed I stayed because I had nowhere to go. They were wrong. I stayed because I chose to. They found me by the second afternoon. Elaine knocked first, too quickly, too hard, then stepped back as if distance might soften what she'd already decided to say. Daniel stood a half step behind her, eyes moving past me into the room, counting what wasn't his. Can we talk? Elaine started, breath already tight. This has gone too far. I didn't move aside. The threshold stayed between us. Daniel tried a gentler angle. Palms open, voice low. We were worried. You shut your phone off. That's not like you. Neither was throwing a rag at me, I said, calm enough to surprise us all. Elaine's jaw set. You're twisting it. We just needed help. Everyone helps in a family. You decided what help meant, I said. You decided who I was. Daniel stepped forward, impatience leaking through. Mom, nobody said you're worthless. You're making it sound worse than it was. I held his gaze. You told me what I was useful for. Silence landed heavy. Elaine crossed her arms, defensive now. So what, you're punishing us? You're going to disappear over a misunderstanding. I didn't disappear, I said. I left. Daniel exhaled, the sound sharp. Come home. We'll reset. We didn't mean it like that. Reset means I go back to cleaning, I said. It means obedience with a softer voice. Elaine shook her head. You're being dramatic. I let that sit. Then I spoke slow and even. I am your mother, not your household appliance. Daniel flinched. Elaine looked away. You want me back, I continued, but not as a person. You want the version of me that fixes things quietly and takes up no space. Daniel swallowed. We need you. You miss the work, I said. Not the woman. Elaine's voice cracked, anger and fear tangling. So that's it. You're not coming back. Not like that, I said. Not anymore. They stood there, empty-handed, facing a boundary they hadn't believed I could draw. I closed the door without raising my voice. The lock clicked once. That was enough. We met a week later on neutral ground, with chairs pulled close enough to talk and far enough apart to leave when needed. Elaine arrived guarded. Daniel looked tired in a way that went past inconvenience. No one reached for me. No one told me where to sit. That alone was different. I'll be clear, I said before momentum could carry us into old habits. I'll visit. I'll spend time with you. I'll help when I choose to. I'm not moving back and I'm not taking orders. Elaine scoffed, at first, arms crossing tight. So we have to schedule our own mother now. I've been on your schedule for years, I said. This is what balance looks like. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. If we agree to this, you won't just vanish again. I didn't vanish, I said. I stopped being available on demand. Elaine's mouth opened, ready to argue, then closed. Her shoulders dropped. I didn't think it was that bad, she said, quieter now. I thought you liked being needed. I liked being loved, I said. Those are not the same thing. Daniel rubbed his hands together, a habit from childhood, when he didn't know what to do with them. I should have stopped it, he said. I didn't. I'm sorry. No qualifiers. No explanations. Elaine looked at him, then at me. Her voice wavered. I didn't mean to make you feel small. You did, I said, and now you know. Silence stretched, uncomfortable, but honest. It held long enough for something to shift. We'll do better, Daniel said. Not a promise, a decision. I expect you to, I said. And I'll leave if you don't. No one challenged that. When we stood to go, Daniel hesitated, then nodded once. Elaine didn't hug me, but she didn't turn away either. We walked out, changed, not fixed, but facing each other without pretending. That was the new rule. Mornings belong to me now. Daniel still calls before coming over, not to announce himself, to ask. Elaine sends a message instead of assuming I'll rearrange my day. Sometimes I say yes, sometimes I don't. Both answers stand. I'll stop by Sunday, Daniel said last week, then paused. If that works for you, it does, I told him. And I meant it because I had chosen it. Elaine arrived with a folded list in her hand, the kind I used to make without thinking. I'm trying not to do what we used to do, she said, not looking at me. Tell me if I mess it up. I will, I said, not gently, not harshly, just clearly. They stay longer now, but they don't linger. When tension rises, it's named instead of swallowed. When it isn't resolved, it waits. No one expects me to smooth it over. I didn't know how much you carried, Daniel said once, voice low. I thought you were just there. I was there, I said. I don't live there anymore. That difference matters. At night, I call the friend who knew me before I learned how to shrink. She listens when I talk, interrupts when I start apologizing out of habit. You're doing it again, she says, and I laugh because she's right. I still love my children. That never changed. What changed was the cost. I no longer disappear to keep peace. I don't trade my time for approval or confuse exhaustion with devotion. When I help, it's because I want to, not because silence demands it. Daniel hugged me last time he left, brief and careful. Elaine touched my arm instead of handing me a list. Neither asked what I was cooking. After the door closed, I sat with the quiet and felt no need to fill it. Everything important was already where it belonged. I kept my name. I kept my voice. I kept my place in my own life. That was never something to earn.